Good evening, and welcome back. Tonight's story is called Apartment 214. A desperate college student moves into an apartment building that should have been empty. Then, every night, 3 slow knocks come from the neighbor across the hall. Turn down the lights, lock your door, and if someone says they're your neighbor from apartment 214, do not open. So this happened to me a little over a year ago, and I still don't sleep right because of it. I've told maybe 3 people the full version, and every time, my hands start shaking at the same part. I'm going to tell it in order, because I think the order is what makes it so wrong. My name's Alex. At the time I was a junior in college, working part-time at a grocery store just to keep my head above water. I need you to understand how broke I was, because that's the only reason any of this happened to me. If I'd had money, I never would have taken that apartment. A month before finals, the house I was renting a room in flooded. A pipe burst, water got into everything, and instead of fixing it, the landlord just ended all our leases and sold the place. Gave us 3 weeks. 3 weeks during midterms, while I'm working 25 hours a week just to cover rent. So I'm panicking, scrolling listings at 2 in the morning, getting more desperate by the minute. And then I find this one listing that doesn't add up. A 1-bedroom, 10 minutes from campus, for less than half of everything else on the page. The photos were dark, grainy, like they'd been taken with the lights half off, but the apartment looked fine. And old, livable. I called the number before I let myself think about it any longer. The guy who picked up sounded annoyed before I'd even said a word. Yeah, I asked if the apartment was still available. It's available. You want it or not. That's the price. You're not gonna find better. Trust me. You wanna see it? Fine. I'll meet you there. I should have hung up right there, but I was exhausted and scared. 3 weeks from being homeless, so I told him I'd come look. The building, even in daylight, felt wrong. Old brick, paint curling off the trim, a water stain running down one whole side like something had bled out of the roof. Half the mailboxes in the lobby had no names on them at all. The realtor was outside when I got there. 50s, wrinkled polo, eyes on his phone the whole time. He looked at me exactly once, like he was confirming I was the right shape to be standing there. Inside was worse. The lobby light was one long fluorescent tube, stuttering in that half-second behind-itself way. The air smelled stale, sealed. There was an elevator with an out-of-order sign taped over it, the paper gone soft and yellow, curling at the corners like it had been there for years. Stairs, he said, already walking. The stairwell carpet was worn straight through to the backing in the center of every step, like thousands of feet had climbed it in a single line. Neither of us said a word the whole way up. The second-floor hallway was long and dim, half the wall sconces dead. My apartment was 212. The door across from it, angled slightly toward mine, was 214. The apartment itself was fine once we were inside. Small, worn, needed a cleaning, nothing alarming. For the price, it felt like I'd gotten away with something. He barely toured me through it. Bathroom's there. Heat's on that thing. Water pressure's bad, but it works. Had me sign the lease, standing at the kitchen counter. Took my deposit and first month in cash, folded it into his jacket without counting it, handed me 2 keys, and said, "Congratulations," in a voice with nothing behind it. He was out the door in under 10 minutes. I stood there in my new empty apartment and thought, okay, weird guy, weird building, but it's cheap, it's close to everything. I'm gonna be fine. I moved in 2 days later. The first few days were normal enough that I stopped thinking about how strange the process had felt. Mattress in, boxes unpacked, shift at the store, classes, trying to claw back sleep. But there were things I filed away, without really looking at them straight on. I never saw another person in that building. Not once. I told myself it was just a quiet building, older tenants who kept to themselves. The hallway light outside my door flickered constantly, and I got used to that unsteady light bleeding in under my door at night, like the hallway had a pulse, and it wasn't a healthy one. And 214 was always closed. Not just shut, sealed. No light leaked from under it. No sound ever came through it. Sometimes at night I'd hear something moving in the hallway. Not loud. A soft, dragging shuffle. Unhurried, careful, like it was pacing itself so it would never quite finish arriving. I told myself it was pipes, or the building settling. I was tired all the time back then, so it was easy to decide I was imagining things and go back to sleep. I really believed that first week. I really did. The first knock came about 10 days after I moved in. Late, past 1 a.m. I'd passed out with the lamp still on. The knock pulled me straight out of sleep. 3 knocks, slow, and for a second I didn't know what room I was in. I lay there, heart going, telling myself it was nothing. Then it came again. 3 knocks, slow, spaced out so evenly they felt measured, like something with a metronome instead of a heartbeat. I got up and looked through the peephole. The hallway light was stuttering, and in that broken light I could just make out a shape outside my door, an older man, standing close to the peephole, closer than felt normal, his face filling almost the whole lens. His eyes were locked dead center on the little glass lens, like he already knew exactly where I'd be standing, and in all the time I watched him, he never blinked. "Sorry to bother you this late," he said. His voice was thin, papery, like it was coming from somewhere further back in his throat than it should. "I'm your neighbor, from 214. Do you have a screwdriver I could borrow? Something's come loose in here." Underneath it, his breathing stayed slow and even, the unbothered kind, wrong for someone at a stranger's door at 1 a.m. Every instinct in my body said, "Don't." It wasn't the words. It was underneath them, some old animal part of me telling my hand to stay off that lock. "It's pretty late," I said through the door. "Can I bring it by in the morning?" A long pause. Oh, so long I almost thought he had already walked away. "Sure," he finally said. "Morning's fine." The words came out evenly spaced, like he was reading them off something. Only after the pause ended did something like a smile arrive on his face, a full beat behind whatever he actually felt. I watched through the peephole as he turned to leave, and the way he walked bothered me more than anything he'd said. Stiff, deliberate, like he was solving each step as a separate problem instead of just walking. Then he was gone, and the hallway was empty again. I didn't really sleep. Around 4 I checked the peephole again. There was a thin, wet-looking smear on the floor outside my door, dragged across the carpet in one long, unbroken line, like a signature. I did not open the door to check. The next morning I knocked on 214 to bring him the screwdriver like I'd said. Nobody answered. Not a shift of weight, not a breath. I had a shift to get to, so I let it go. The second knock came 4 nights later, same time, almost to the minute, like it had been scheduled. By then I was sleeping worse, just from waiting for it. 3 knocks. I was upright before I'd even finished waking up. I looked through the peephole again. Same guy, same spot. But this time I noticed things I hadn't let myself notice before. He was standing too still, not normal person still. He was standing the way a photograph stands. Once, he shifted his weight onto 1 foot, some small human tell, and I nearly relaxed. Then he settled back into the exact stance he'd started in, like something resetting to a default position. "I need to talk to you," he said. No mention of the screwdriver. His voice had flattened out, toneless, like a recording of a friendly voice playing at the wrong speed. "It's really late," I said. "Can it wait?" He didn't answer right away. I watched his head tilt, slow and small, to one side, then a little farther than it should have gone before it stopped. His eyes never left the peephole while his head moved, like it was turning around something that stayed exactly still. "No," he said, "it can't." I didn't open the door. I told him I needed sleep. He could catch me another time. I don't remember choosing those words. They just came out of me. There was a pause, and then the door of 214 slammed shut so hard I felt it in the floor. I stood there frozen a full minute before I moved. I didn't sleep at all that night. The weeks after that blurred together. I worked my shifts, sat through classes half present, called the realtor once about an issue with a neighbor, and he told me, bored, that he only handled leases, and hung up before I could ask anything else. I started noticing the building itself more. No TV through any wall, ever. No shower running. No footsteps except at night, outside my own door, and no door closing except 214s. The silence stopped feeling like an old sleepy building and started feeling like something being deliberately withheld. The Katie night is the one I still think about the most. Katie was a girl from my program. We'd hooked up a couple times the year before, stayed close after. Real, but not serious. I had never given her my new address. I hadn't even told her I'd moved. Same time, almost 1 a.m, when the pounding started. Not knocking. Pounding. Both fists. I got to the door already feeling sick, looked through the peephole, and my whole body went cold, because it was her voice. "Alex, please, I need you to let me in. Please, I didn't know where else to go." It sounded exactly like her. Through the peephole I could see her, or something built to look like her, standing right against the door. But her face was wrong. Close enough that for one terrible second my hand actually drifted toward the lock. But the longer I looked, the more it came apart. Her smile arrived a beat too late, like it had to be told what she just said before it could react. Her eyes sat a fraction of an inch off from where they should have been. Her skin looked faintly swollen in places that should never swell, like something had been packed in underneath it. "Katie, how did you find this address?" I said, my voice shaking. "You gave it to me," she said. "Don't you remember? Or I never gave her that address." And the calm, patient confidence in how she said it crawled under my skin worse than anything else that had happened yet. "Please," she said again, her voice cracking exactly the way I used to when it was real. "My car broke down. I'm scared. Just let me in." I told her, through the door, that I was going to call her right now to check. The second I said it, her voice changed. It snapped, like a switch thrown somewhere behind her face, wet and low, a thick, clotted quality underneath it, like something had come loose in her throat. "Alex," it said, dragging my name out long and low. "Alex, Alex." Then the scratching started. Nails, or something shaped like nails, dragging down the wood in long, unhurried lines, like it had all the time in the world and wanted me to know it. My whole body locked. "You left the light on over your stove," it said, in that same wrong, wet voice. "You always leave it on, even when you're not home." That's true. I do that. Nobody knew that but me. I ended up sitting on my bedroom floor, phone in my hand, waiting for it to stop. It went on maybe 10 more minutes before it just stopped. No slam door, just silence, so complete it felt like it had a texture. I texted the real Katie at 2 a.m. She didn't answer until the morning, and when she called, she sounded genuinely confused. "Alex, I don't even know where you live. You never told me you moved." I didn't tell her what actually happened. When I opened my door that morning, there were 4 long scratch marks gouged into the wood, deep enough that I could fit my fingernail into the groove. About a week later, on a day off, I decided I needed to understand what was happening in that building. I knocked on every door on my floor. Nobody answered. Went down to the first floor, tried those two, went up to the third. Same total silence behind every single door. I stood in that third floor hallway, under that same stuttering light, and felt something cold settle into my chest and stay there. I was the only person living in that entire building. I tried calling the realtor. The number didn't even ring. Just a flat, automated voice. The number you have dialed is not a working number. I found a second number in my lease paperwork for the property owner. Disconnected. Same dead message. I knew I should call the police right then. That was the smart move. But some part of me, a part I'm still not proud of, kept whispering that I needed to see it myself first. I needed to know what was actually on the other side of that door. I couldn't make myself do the smart thing. The need to know had gotten bigger than the fear, even though the fear hadn't gone anywhere. My mouth had gone bone dry. My hands were shaking, small at first, worse once I stood. I stood at my own front door a long time before I opened it, listening. Nothing. The same dead silence, except now it felt like it was waiting to see what I'd do. I opened my door slowly. Apartment 214 was maybe 15 feet away. It felt like 50. Every step sounded too loud, and the flickering hallway light kept warping my eyes, making the hall jump forward in little broken stutters. I kept my eyes locked on that door the whole way, like if I looked away even once, something would be different by the time I looked back. I stopped in front of it, staring at the little brass 214, the same number I'd walked past 100 times without ever letting myself touch it. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely get a grip on the handle. I expected it to be locked. Some part of me was counting on it, so I'd have an excuse to turn around and let this be somebody else's problem. It wasn't locked. The handle turned smooth and easy, like it had just been oiled, and the door swung open under its own weight, like it had been waiting for exactly this moment. The smell hit me before my eyes even adjusted, and it hit so hard I stumbled back a step. Thick and wet and rotten, spoiled meat left out far too long, laced with something coppery underneath, and threaded through all of it, a sweet, sickly smell that somehow made everything worse, like something trying to cover the rot and failing badly at it. Under all of it, mildew and old standing damp. My eyes started watering instantly. I gagged hard, grabbing the door frame just to stay upright. Once my eyes adjusted, I understood what I was looking at, and I wish to God I hadn't. The carpet was soaked through in wide, dark patches, some dried black and flaking, some still dark red and glossy looking. Long smears ran down one wall, handprints dragged downward, like someone had tried to hold themselves up and slid anyway. Near the floor, the drywall was torn open, deep gouges, like something had clawed at it, trying to find a way out, or a way in. Scattered through all of it were small, ordinary things that somehow made it worse than the blood did. A driver's license, one corner sticking out from under a stained pillow, a ring of keys sitting in the middle of the carpet, like they'd been dropped mid-motion and never picked back up, a wallet, flipped open, empty where the cash should have been, a pair of sneakers, side by side, placed so neatly, like whoever wore them had stepped out of them out of pure habit and never come back, a backpack, unzipped, notebook spilling out, a phone charger still plugged into the wall with the cord snapped clean in half. Some of the blood in the walls was old, flaking, gone the color of rust, but some of it, closer to the center of the room, was still dark and looked wet. And that difference is the thing that finally broke something loose in me. because the old blood meant this had been happening a long time, and the fresh blood meant it hadn't stopped. Standing in that doorway, I understood this wasn't just a creepy apartment or some old crime scene. This was something that kept happening again and again in that same room, and I'd been sleeping 15 feet away from it every single night. I turned and ran down the hallway, down the stairs, out into the parking lot, and didn't stop until the building was small behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone to dial 911. The police got there fast. I stood on the sidewalk shaking, trying to explain to the first officer what I'd just seen. He looked at me after I gave him my apartment number and said, "Wait, you were living in this building?" Something in the way he said it dropped my stomach even further. More officers showed up and started clearing the building floor by floor, always in pairs, none of them talking much once they came back down. One sat with me in the back of a patrol car, asked basic questions. When I told him about the realtor, the cash, the phone number that didn't exist anymore, he just kept writing. But I could see in his face that none of it was adding up the way it was supposed to. Eventually, somebody laid it out for me straight. The building had been effectively abandoned for years. Code violations, an ownership dispute nobody had ever bothered to sort out. As far as the city had on record, there weren't supposed to be any legal tenants in that building at all. Nobody could explain how I'd ended up with a signed lease and 2 working keys. When they went into 214, it didn't take long before the first officer came back out. He didn't even make it to the stairs before he was bent over a trash can, being sick. Another came out a few minutes later, pale, jaw locked tight, talking low and fast into his radio about needing backup and someone from the coroner's office. One of the older officers, the kind with enough years on him that nothing should rattle him anymore, got on his radio before anyone asked, requesting 3 more units, then correcting himself to 4, his voice level except for one small catch in the middle of it. They found remains in there. More than one person. Some of it, from what I overheard, was old enough it barely registered as human anymore. Some of it wasn't old at all. Some of it had names, within a matter of days. I found out later, watching the news, that a couple of those names belonged to people who'd gone missing over the past year, all last seen after answering cheap rental listings in that exact part of town. They questioned me for hours, at the scene, then at the station. I told them everything. The old man claiming to be from 214, the knocking, always the same time, like it was scheduled on a clock nobody else could see. The night it sounded exactly like Katie, even though she'd never once been there. The scratching in the wood. I watched their faces while I talked, and I could see the exact moment most of them stopped taking me seriously as a witness and started looking at me the way you look at someone who's been through something terrible. None of the officers who'd gone inside 214 talked about it much afterward, and the ones who had kept a careful distance from each other the rest of the night. One detective asked me to describe the man from 214 one more time, for the record. I told him the truth, that it looked like an old man, that it was close enough to human that for a second you could almost believe it, but that something underneath it was wrong, in a way I still can't fully put into words, like whatever it actually was hadn't quite finished learning how to wear a person yet. He wrote that down without saying much back. I left that night and never went back inside, not even for my own things. I found a new apartment within the week, nicer, more expensive, in a busy part of town with actual neighbors I could hear moving through the walls, actual noise, actual life. For a while, I actually let myself believe it was over. The nights got easier. I slept through most of them. I want to say I still believe it's over. I really do. But I don't, not completely, not after what happened a few weeks later. It was a normal night. I'd fallen asleep early for once, actually resting for the first time in what felt like months. 3 slow knocks woke me up. I lay there in the dark, completely still, my heart slamming so hard against my ribs I could hear it in my own ears. For a second I tried to tell myself it was nothing. A delivery. The wrong door. It didn't stop, the way a wrong door knock stops once someone realizes their mistake. It just waited, patient, like it already knew I was deciding. Some part of me started to get up before I caught myself, and just sat there on the edge of the bed, not 1 inch closer to the door than I'd been a minute earlier. Then I heard the voice on the other side. Soft, familiar, patient in a way that dropped my stomach straight through the floor of that new apartment, 3 blocks and a whole city away from anything that had ever had the number 214 on it. "Alex, it's your neighbor from 214.